You ever have to keep a secret? Maybe a little white lie? Or something you tucked away to keep from hurting someone's feelings? Now, imagine keeping a secret that could collapse the entire American economy. It was 1893. The United States was on the edge of a cliff. Banks were closing, businesses were folding, and people were terrified. Right in the middle of that storm, President Grover Cleveland felt something, a rough spot on the roof of his mouth. It was cancer, but if the public found out, the panic would turn into a total meltdown. So, Grover Cleveland did something unthinkable. He disappeared, not to a hospital, not to a secure bunker, but to a private yacht in the middle of the ocean. This is the story of a surgery performed in secret on a moving boat, while the world thought the president was just out for a relaxing fishing trip. Now, to know Grover Cleveland is to know a man who was built like a safe. They called him Big Steve. He was a large man, solid, with a mustache that looked like it could stop a bullet. He was a straight shooter. Folks trusted him because he didn't play games. But in 1893, the country was in a world of hurt. We were in the middle of a Great Depression. The gold standard was shaking, and the only thing keeping the markets from flatlining was the people's belief that Grover Cleveland had his hands steady on the wheel. He was the only thing standing between order and absolute chaos. And that's when his own body decided to betray him. It started on a Tuesday. The president was running his tongue along the roof of his mouth, and he felt it, a jagged, rough patch. He didn't say anything at first. He had a country to run, but by Sunday, it had grown. He called in the White House doctor. The doctor took one look, and his face went white. It was a cavernous ulcer. It was malignant. It had to come out, and it had to come out now. But Cleveland looked at the headlines. He saw the breadlines forming in the streets. He knew if the newspapers ran the headline, "President has cancer," the stock market would vanish overnight. He told his doctors, "We have to do this, but not a soul can know, not the press, not the politicians, not even my own vice president." So, how do you perform a major surgery on the President of the United States without anyone noticing? You don't go to a hospital, too many nurses, too many wagging tongues. Instead, they look to the water. A close friend of the president owned a yacht called the Oneida. The plan was simple and dangerous. The president would tell the press he was feeling a bit run down and needed a 4-day fishing trip to clear his head. He'd board the boat in New York, steam out into the Long Island Sound, and while the boat was tossing and turning in the waves, a team of 6 surgeons would go to work. No operating room, no high-tech monitors, just a wooden chair, some ether, and a lot of prayer. July 1st, 1893, the Oneida cleared the harbor. The sun was setting, and the president sat down in a chair that had been lashed to the mast of the boat to keep it from sliding. Think about that for a second. The leader of the free world, sitting on a yacht, being put under with ether, while the waves knocked the boat back and forth. The surgeons had to be fast. They had to remove a large portion of his upper jaw and 5 teeth. They didn't cut through his cheek. They didn't want any scars that would give the secret away. They did the whole thing through his mouth. For 90 minutes, the only sound was the sloshing of the water and the clinking of surgical tools. When they were done, Grover Cleveland was minus a jawbone, but he was alive. A few days later, the Oneida pulled back into port. Grover Cleveland walked off that boat on his own 2 feet. He had his collar turned up, and he was leaning on a cane. But he was there. The press asked, "How was the fishing, Mr. President?" He mumbled something about a bad toothache and went straight to his home. Behind closed doors, he was in agony. He had to learn how to speak all over again. A dentist had built him a prosthetic jaw made of vulcanized rubber. He'd practice in front of a mirror for hours, trying to get his voice to sound normal, trying to make sure his face didn't look lopsided. And you know what? It worked. He went back to Congress. He gave a major speech, and not a single person suspected that half of the president's face was made of rubber. Well, almost nobody suspected. There was one reporter, a fellow named E.J. Edwards. He was a bloodhound for a story. He started poking around, talking to deckhands on the Oneida, asking why so many doctors were on a fishing trip. He eventually published the truth. He laid it all out. But here's the kicker. The White House didn't just deny it. They went on a full-scale campaign to destroy the man's reputation. They called him a liar and a fake news peddler. And because the people loved honest Grover so much, they believed the president. The reporter was disgraced. His career was ruined. The secret stayed safe, buried under the weight of the president's popularity. It wasn't until 1917, nearly 25 years later, that one of the surgeons finally came clean. Long after Cleveland had passed away, the truth was revealed. The public was stunned. They realized that their president had risked his life, literally operated on in a floating closet, all to keep the country from falling into a panic. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest heroes are the ones who suffer in total silence. Grover Cleveland didn't want a parade. He didn't want sympathy. He just wanted the American dollar to stay strong and the American people to stay calm. He carried that secret and that rubber jaw right to his grave. You know, we ask a lot of our presidents. We ask them to be leaders. We ask them to be icons. But stories like this remind us that they're also just men. Men with fears, men with illnesses, and men who sometimes have to make impossible choices in the dark. I hope you enjoyed this look at the most secret surgery in history. If you like these stories that show the grit behind the glory, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the President's Stories. We've got plenty more secrets to uncover, from the halls of Washington to the high seas. Until next time, keep your secrets close and your head held high. Thanks for watching.